Hello and welcome to historic Nottingham in central England, famous for its links to the legend of Robin Hood. Well, today Nottingham is to play host for the second time to the milk race, which returned last year after a 20-year absence, taking on a new and modernised one-day format. The very best exponents of city centre bike racing are in Nottingham today for the culmination of a festival of cycling, with the women's elite race taking place on a demanding and technical course through the streets of the city centre. Today the race is a one-day affair with some of the top riders from Britain and Europe on the start line for an event that is already an important element in spreading the message of the health benefits of milk. Between 1958 and 1993, the milk race was the most prestigious cycling event in the British calendar, and the Milk Marketing Board's sponsorship remains the longest association that the sport has ever had. Historically, the milk race was conducted in stages over a number of days and locations, and was contested by some of the most successful road cyclists ever.
So I'm here with Lorraine from Arla. Lorraine, what are you guys doing here today?
Well, obviously we're one of the main sponsors of the milk race, and we just want to get people thinking differently about milk. Milk is a really fantastic drink. It's full of everything, calcium, protein, and we want people to remember that if you want to live a healthy lifestyle, and especially if you're exercising, drink milk before and after sport. It's great for rehydration, it's great for muscle repair, and we just want people to really start to think differently again about milk.
So you think it's good that this is associated with such a big sporting event?
Oh, well, it's fantastic. I mean, the milk race last year, I think, attracted about 60,000 spectators, so it's a fantastic platform for us to engage with all different people, and especially families, especially young children who, you know, really enjoy drinking milk and can drink lots of it. So it's a lot of fun as well. It's a nice thing to be part of.
And it seems like it's been a great atmosphere today. Have you enjoyed it so far?
Well, yeah, apart from the fact that it's been raining really, really heavily, it has been a lot of fun, and the people of Nottingham have still come out, and they're thousands, it seems, despite the rain.
Excellent, Lorraine, thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.
So we're here with Janet from British Cycling and Leslie from Nottingham City Council. Girls, tell me about this partnership that you're working together with.
Okay, so I work for British Cycling in the recreation department, and we're all about promoting recreational cycling. And the way that British Cycling works is with local authorities, and in this case we're working with Nottingham City Council.
So just give me an idea about what this partnership does for you at the council.
So British Cycling help us organise a load of free guided rides across the city during the summer, which people can access for free. They come along and take part, and then try and get more people cycling across the city.
And when does the big route start? Is it the 15th of June?
That's right, yeah, we're coinciding it with Bike Week this year, so we're doing a ride every day during that week. And then after that, there are 35 rides throughout the summer. They start at different locations, and they're generally on a Sunday or a Wednesday evening. So there's plenty of opportunity for people to come along. And the important thing is that it's all free. It's free to, you just need to sign up on the website, but it's free to take part.
The riders face a 1.2 kilometre circuit with several testing corners. After the start-finish, it's a tight left-hander towards Friar Lane, past the pits and down to a sharp left into Castle Gate. Then it's left again up the slight incline through St Peter's Gate into a Bridlesmith Gate before the left-hander that takes the riders back across the start-finish line. So all set to go for the Women's Elite Race at the Milk Race 2014, and what a mouth-watering entry list we have for this event. Wiggle Honda have come in strength, and they brought with them the reigning champion, Danny King. Laura Trott is their double Olympic champion, and ranged against them the top riders from the local British scene, including several UCI riders. We've got Katie Archibald, who's in stunning form, wonderful track rider. Ciara Horn, also part of the British track scene. And of course, Dame Sarah Story, legend in Paralympic cycling and a powerhouse rider at this level. We've Starley Primer Pro Cycling, also with strength. Eileen Rowe, the Scottish rider, going very well indeed. And running through the entry list, over 40 of the top British riders, with several international visitors set to put it up to them. Charlotte Becker, a late entry for Wiggle Honda, a very strong, powerful rider, capable of doing a really good job for the team. So the flag is in and they're underway as we get going for 50 minutes plus 5 laps of racing. It's all going to total up to somewhere around about 30 laps of racing here in the centre of Nottingham, this city with such a fantastic heritage in cycling history. And that is a very tight and technical left-hander, Rochelle. That's going to catch them out, I think, as things go on. And that's, well, what the essence of criterium racing, isn't it? It's these tight corners that make it so difficult.
Yeah, that one's certainly a difficult corner at the top of the course there, because it's a left and a right and a left. It's a really technical part of the course. So those riders that are more experienced in a tight bunch and at these speeds, I think that we're going to see a few crashes today.
Well, already riders at the back are feeling the effect of the pace that's being set, and in the early stages by Charlotte Becker of the Wiggle Honda team. The German rider immediately onto the front. Pearl Izumi, Sports Tours International, aware of the danger and keeping tabs on her.
Well, Charlotte Becker there, she's taken control of the race right from the start. She's actually just flown in overnight from China. She flew into London and then did the trip up here to Nottingham. So she'll have quite tired legs. She had quite a bit of a success there. She won the Tour of Busan, which is a UCI category race. So she'll definitely be a little bit tired, but taking control at the front there.
Eleanor Barker, Great Britain rider, just sitting on Charlotte Becker's wheel at the moment, and it all looks very cool, calm and collected for Becker on the front. And that is the essence of criterium racing as well. Things are often just that little bit easier when you're at the front, and at the back of the race it's often a bit of an elimination race from the back.
We can see the riders there from the Wiggle Honda team all at the front. They're definitely here in strength in numbers, so they'll be ones to watch, but they're taking control, just setting the pace there at the front and making sure that the race is just a little bit controlled at the start.
1.2 kilometre circuit, 1200 metres and plenty of braking points, so that means heavy acceleration, and that's always complicated. And look at that, that's Sarah Story that has just touched a wheel and fallen off in the middle of the group. So anxious moments for the Paralympic track cycling legend there, but she's straight up on the bike without any difficulty, so not too much harm done, but just a little bit of a lack of concentration perhaps, or just the rider in front braking a little bit earlier than she might have expected, and Sarah Story, but she does have the opportunity to take a lap out.
Yeah, I think absolutely, if she stays calm now and just takes her lap out and gets composed, she'll be able to get back in, but it obviously upsets your rhythm a little bit to have an accident like that, so you've just got to stay calm. Here it is again, she's just overlapped that wheel. The rider came in a little bit earlier than she thought, but I mean, it's great to see her back on the bike. She's just been off with maternity leave. Obviously, she's won 22 Paralympic medals, so it's quite an amazing story. And just to have her back in racing now after going away, she had a little baby girl called Louise, so it's great to see her back on the bike.
And she is back on the bike and will be back in the main field. She has the opportunity to take a lap out. Some people think that's a little bit confusing that they don't do the full distance, but of course they've been greatly inconvenienced by the crash, so it's not like there's any advantage gained. Always a deficit in that situation. So Wiggle Honda riders massed across the front of the group and looking around them to see what sort of damage they're doing. At the moment the pace doesn't look to be too difficult, but you can be sure that that's going to ramp up as the race progresses, and even as I say it, there are a few gaps being left by riders just at the back, so people feeling the whiplash effect as they wind their way through Nottingham city centre.
Well, I think the two main teams today with strength in numbers is the Pearl Izumi Sports Tours International team. They're here without two of their riders, Hayley Jones and Nikki Juniper. Their two strongest riders are not here on the start line today, so Sarah Story's here, and the other rider we haven't mentioned much of yet, Katie Archibald. She'll definitely be one to watch today, and one that the Wiggle Honda team will be fearing.
Amy Roberts now on the front of the group for Wiggle Honda. They're sharing the pace, sharing it out with Charlotte Becker doing long turns. Amy Roberts just on the right hand side, the rider from Wales. Hands over to Becker once more. And it looks as if the plan is to present Laura Trott into the optimum position at the back end of this race. Danny King too, one of their favourite riders, the reigning champion of this event. Is it all about Danny King and Laura Trott?
Well, I think for Danny this is a very special race, the milk race, because she won it in its comeback year last year, and it was definitely one of the most prestigious races Danny won on the road last year. So it's an important race to her, and she definitely wants the support of Wiggle Honda here today. Laura Trott, obviously she always likes to win bike races, but she'll be happy to be in there supporting her team. And obviously Amy Roberts here to support Eleanor Barker, and Lottie Becker we see on the front there again, really controlling the pace. As I said, she's just finished a really tough tour in China, so yeah, a strong team, but I think Danny King, being the reigning champion, she would be the leader and the protected rider for their team today.
We just saw Sarah Story being absorbed by the group once more. She's been back to the pits, back on the bike, no harm done, and she's safely ensconced in the group, which is being led, as it has been pretty much since the start, by Charlotte Becker. Welcome back to Nottingham for the second ever edition of the women's milk race, with the Wiggle Honda team setting a relentless pace on the front of the group, as they have done since the start. But now they're starting to get a little bit of contribution from some of the other teams, with Perlazumi Sports Tours International represented on the front by the top Scottish track cyclist who's burst on the scene in the last couple of years. That's Katie Archibald, that has gone to the front, and look at the damage that she's starting to do, Rochelle, as riders are starting to let gaps go right through the field.
You can see the pace is really on, because these riders are all strung out. There's no bunch anymore, they're just trying to hold the wheel in front of them, so it's definitely a very high pace and an exciting race.
Yeah, that's Emily Barnes from Team Mulebar Girls Sigma Sport, that's struggling a little bit on the back and hoping that there's a little bit of a let up in this pace at the front as Perlazumi start to get involved. Wiggle Honda are not going to have it all their own way this afternoon.
Well, it's great to see the depth of numbers here in the UK. Wiggle Honda have come over, an international UCI team, to race against these riders, and every time they race here they don't know they're competitive, so it's a little bit difficult. But of course Laura Trott and Danny King, they'll be familiar with some of these faces.
Sarah Story goes to the front, takes over from Katie Archibald. So we see representatives of Starley Primal Pro Cycling also moving up towards the front. That's Katie Curtis there, that's to the fore in the group, and recognising the danger, because this is the first critical moment I think we've had in the race where the pressure is really on and several teams looking to get involved, and the main group now has been absolutely slashed in size, as within the space of a lap there's so many girls have been eliminated. Will they be able to get back on?
Well, you can see there's a lot of purple jerseys there from the Perlazumi Sports Tours International team, and they've certainly been the dominant UK team, haven't they, here this season. They've already won the 3 days of Bedford, and also another race with Katie Archibald.
Eleanor Barker now on the front for Wiggle Honda, as towards the back Tanya Griffiths of Starley Primal Pro Cycling desperately scrabbling to stay involved in this. Her team, one of the top squads on the local scene, and certainly interested in putting it up to the riders from Wiggle Honda, riding at a higher level in Europe of course, but coming back to Britain they'll be finding out that the local scene is very strong indeed. A little bit further back, Nicola Butler of Perlazumi Sports Tours International wants to try and stay up there as well.
Great to see Eleanor Barker here. She's been on the front working for her teammates today. She's still on the front there, so they're putting the pressure down. And of course there's 3 of the 4 girls in this race that won the Teams Pursuit for GB this year at the World Championships, being Laura Trott, Danny King, Eleanor Barker and Katie Archibald, who's not riding for the Wiggle Honda team, with the Perlazumi Sports Tours International team. So there's the 4 riders here that won that gold medal earlier in the year at the World Championships.
Amy Roberts takes it up for Wiggle Honda, 23-year-old from Southampton. three-time world champion in the team pursuit, so she certainly knows how to generate immense amounts of power. And track skills usually translate very well to city centre racing. You see Barker on the front, and she's really putting the hurt on other riders through the group. Katie Archibald clearly not enjoying it. Well, I suspect she is enjoying it, but the pain on her face indicates that there's serious efforts being made.
Well, she's definitely one of the riders to fear here today, Katie Archibald, and she'd certainly be a little bit worried that there's so many of those black and orange jerseys around her. She's lost a little bit of support there of Sarah Story, dropped back a little bit, so she's not got that many of her teammates up the front there, so she's starting to get a little bit nervous about the numbers of these black and orange Wiggle Honda jerseys.
So Wiggle Honda back on the front again. Perla Zumi Sports Tours International have slotted back in a little bit further back in the group. There's a little sense that the pace has just dropped off ever so slightly. Some of the riders that were caught napping there are managing to get back into contention, but for how much longer? As Charlotte Becker goes back to the front once more and strings it out. And every time Becker goes to the front with intent, it causes massive damage through the group as they're all lined out one single line, and that's the indication that the pace is really on in a big way. Another lap completed here in Nottingham, and Wiggle Honda putting it up to the other teams.
Well, the pace is certainly starting to heat up now. You can see that there's riders just struggling to hang on the back there, but be interesting to see what the tactic is here of Wiggle Honda. They've definitely got the numbers, and all the riders positioned well at the front there, but there's still those two riders there from the Perla Zumi Sports Tour international team. So they're the ones that they're worried about and trying to shake, but at the moment they've still got a few other teams in the mix there.
Yeah, Becker's drilling it on the front in a big way. We're on the second preem lap, the second intermediate sprint. This for a completely separate competition, and there's prize money on offer here, so there'll be several riders that'll be interested in the possibility of being first across the line at the conclusion of this lap and picking up a few quid into the bargain. Becker, it is though, I think is more concerned really with trying to control the pace and make sure that she's presenting her teammates into the best possible situation at the conclusion of this afternoon's race. Cracks developing through the group. This little technical fast left-hander into a tight right-hander, certainly making it difficult for teams and riders to get back into contention if they've let the gap go at all. It's Becker on the front.
She's certainly making things hard out there today. She's won a world championship in a team time trial a couple of years ago, one of the strongest teams in the world, Specialized Lululemon. She joined Wiggle Honda last year mid-season, and she's gone on to win a couple of UCI races, one just recently last week in China. So she's having an amazing ride here. She's really putting the pressure down.
Yeah, she seems to have recovered from that overnight flight. The jet lag hasn't taken anything out of her legs. So it's Becker that leads the field across the line to take that bream, and a little extra reason to make her trip to England worthwhile. And immediately it's Katie Archibald that moves to the front of the group through this tight left-hander that's caught so many riders out so far, and immediately she opens up a gap, and it's a perfect opportunity to launch an attack right after the bream.
Well, the pace had been lifted the last few laps by the Wiggle Honda team, but Katie Archibald said, I'm going to take this race into my own hands, and she's not intimidated by all those jerseys of the Wiggle Honda team, and she's on the front now, and she's the one that's hurting the rest of the riders.
She certainly is. Katie Archibald, just 20 years of age, from Glasgow. Ex-swimmer. She's only in the bike racing scene just a few years, but she's already vaulted into the top ranks of the British track cycling squad. Reigning world and European champion in the team pursuit. And the power that she's capable of generating is causing big fissures throughout this group. Now the Wiggle Honda group team are slotting in behind Katie Archibald, who's causing plenty of cracks to develop, and at the moment it looks as if she's certainly forming a selection at the front.
It's really a really impressive ride by Katie Archibald, just to get on the front there after Wiggle Honda had tried to hurt her so much. She's the one that now has turned the tables, and she's hurting them back. Yes, she's a phenomenal story there with Katie Archibald, having moved from Glasgow to Manchester to pursue a career on the track, but only 2 years in the sport and already had won a world championship. It's possible she could even have a future on the road by the looks of things.
So a couple of representatives of Perla Zumi Sports Tours International, led by the riders on the front of the group. That's Katie Archibald. We've got a couple of riders from the Starley Primal Pro Cycling. Katie Curtis is in there, so too is Eileen Rowe. The massed ranks of the Wiggle Honda squad, they've got what, 3, 4, 5 riders in there at the moment, and definitely have the numerical advantage. Curtis surveys the scene after her big effort. Barker goes to the front to take it up for Wiggle Honda, continue this effort, and that really is a tight corner, and there's a selection of lines and different ways of going through it, it would appear.
Well, that's a difficult thing in criterium racing because the rider in front of you might not necessarily take the same line as you want to take, and we saw that earlier crash with Sarah Story where she wanted to take a particular line but the person in front of her came in early and took out the front wheel. So it is a difficult thing, criterium racing. It's very technical, and you really need to be able to corner well to save the power in the legs.
Clem Copey on the back of the group at the moment, riding with Team Mulebar Girls Sigma Sport, and you could really sense the whiplash effect as she was out of the saddle longer than any other rider in her efforts to try and stay with that leading group, which has been pared down significantly as a result of the injection of pace coming from Charlotte Becker and most recently by Katie Archibald. Wiggle Honda back in control though on the front. They've got 4 riders and all the other teams are watching with interest and some concern, I would imagine. Clem Copey on the back of the group, and they're just picking up a lapped rider there. And that's going to be a feature of this afternoon's race. This is just 1.2 kilometres in length, and lots of riders are going to be shelled out the back and mopped up pretty quickly because it's fast and frenetic city centre racing. Great to see such a huge crowd. Over 80,000 people in the centre of Nottingham today. A town with such massive links to the cycling industry over the years. A huge appetite for big-time bike racing, and they're being treated to some wonderful entertainment as on the front Amy Roberts continues to set a relentless pace, and they're in one long line going across the line to complete another lap. 13 laps in.
Crowds here are absolutely phenomenal, and this is one of the most prestigious races on the women's calendar, so there's so many people here lining the streets, and it's an important race for any female cyclist to come and do their best at.
Well, their best at the moment is certainly for the Wiggle Honda team, drawing the sting out of so many of the local teams at the moment. Starley Primal Pro Cycling well represented towards the front, but these are nervous moments. You sense there's a bit of a team time trial going on at the front. Certainly you've got big effort coming in from Anna Bianca Schnitzmeyer, the German rider with Wiggle Honda, on the front of the group, and she's got Amy Roberts for company just behind.
They're certainly working hard to try and break this up and dwindle down the bunch, and they're doing a good job, but Wiggle Honda is still lined out on the front there. Anna Bianca, she's doing a great job to make the race hard, and I think that might be the tactic. They want to lose as many people as possible so they have more cards to play in the second half of the race.
Yeah, Katie Curtis is the rider in red just behind the massed ranks of the Wiggle Honda riders. She's the 25-year-old from Cardiff, Welsh road race champion a few years ago.
There's a counter-attack there by Laura Trott. She's just moved off the front.
And look at this. This is a big move by Laura Trott. She's got a significant advantage on the group behind. Katie Curtis has spotted the danger, but they're going to have to move quickly to close this one down. So Laura Trott on the front. We're going to take another commercial break. Join us after these. Welcome back to Nottingham, welcome back to the Milk Race 2014, the women's elite event, and it's double Olympic champion Laura Trott that's off the front and has the significant advantage on the main group. She gets out of the saddle trying to draw every ounce of power out of that bike as she, she's certainly managed to open a very impressive gap on the field, and she's going to settle into pursuit mode. Has a little look over her shoulder to see if the group behind have reacted. Katie Curtis from Starley Primal Pro Cycling recognised the danger. Will she have any help? Because I think you're going to definitely need help to close down Laura Trott. Yes, indeed, Eileen Rowe has gone to the front as well. So Starley Primal Pro Cycling have taken responsibility for closing down Trott, but it's not going to be an easy thing to do.
No, I think Laura Trott, once she gets a gap like that, it's going to be hard to close down, and she's having a look around. It'll be interesting to know if she's doing this move to set it up for Danny King to make other people chase and to put Danny in a good position, or whether she's going to go for the win from here.
Wiggle Honda have so many tactical options. They've got strength in numbers, and Laura Trott, she's gone solo, but she's capable of a pretty good sprint as well. And then to have Danny King back in the group, well, they have so many options, as I say. Eileen Rowe knows that it's so important that they get Laura Trott back into the group as soon as possible. Needless to say, Wiggle Honda are just going to play a watching brief. Charlotte Becker is locking it out one position behind the Starley Pro Cycling rider, and look at what this effort has done, because as Rowe chases behind.
Well, they're certainly closing in a little bit, but Laura's not going to make it easy for them. They've had to work quite hard to close this gap. If they get back to her, then you can see that the bunch is really split to bits now. There's not many people left in the bike race.
Yeah, even if they get back to Trott at this point, he's certainly forced a very significant selection. And these are the strongest riders left at the front. And that's the way it tends to work in criterium racing. You go absolutely flat out from the front, and riders tend to disappear from behind you. A little bit less tactical than road racing, and sometimes a little bit more entertaining for that fact.
I think criterium racing is the most entertaining racing in the world, because you get to see the riders come past really frequently, and you get a really sense of what's going on in the race, and up close with the riders to see their facial expressions. And here we see Laura Trott's just being caught, so there's a rider there from the Perlazumi team putting pressure on now. So this is a dangerous part of the race where other riders and other teams can counter-attack once they catch Laura.
Yeah, Katie Archibald came up to give Eileen Rowe a bit of a hand. As further back, Katie Curtis has dropped back into that chasing group. So two groups on the road that are really playing out the battle here, as it's a small select group of 5 riders up front, and they have they've forged over 100 metres advantage, probably a couple of 100 metres at this point, over the chasing group of riders. And they've got to get their skates on, because if they don't get up to these riders pretty quickly, well, it's going to be curtains for them. It's Katie Archibald on the front for Perlazumi Sports Tours International. On her wheel, Laura Trott, who's settling in and trying to recover after that big effort. Eileen Rowe is there for Perlazumi Sports Tours International. Charlotte Becker and Danny King has latched on the back, the first time we've really seen the reigning champion, as she's forced herself into contention. Archibald in slow motion here. So now Charlotte Becker has a few bike lengths advantage over Katie Archibald, as she leads the field across the line out on the third cream lap of the afternoon.
You see Danny King's just losing a few lengths in the corners there. I'm not sure if she's nervous or if she's going to set herself up for a bit of an attack, but Charlotte Becker, she's definitely making Katie Archibald work here, and then the other Wiggle Honda riders there are looking at each other. There's a two-person breakaway now. Charlotte Becker and Katie Archibald, both very, very strong riders, possibly the 2 strongest riders in the race.
Yeah, Becker, big dig from her, and then throttle back, had a little look over her shoulder, just trying to survey the scene and see what sort of damage she'd done. Significant, I think, would be the word. Lots and lots of damage, and she definitely is causing the riders behind to hurt, including 1 or 2 of her teammates, and that seems to be her prime focus, is to try and keep her Wiggle Honda team, as many of those riders, in contention as possible. So Katie Archibald has spotted an opportunity to try and eliminate a couple of the Wiggle Honda riders, and she's drilling it on the front, surveyed by Becker, and who's going to be able to get across that gap?
Well, it looks like Laura Trott's coming across now. Lottie Becker, she wouldn't be confident in that position with Katie Archibald, because she doesn't know that rider, and also she's here to support her British teammates. They've been supporting her in the earlier races in the season, so now they've got 2 Wiggle Honda riders there with Katie Archibald.
Becker was a valued member of World Time Trial Championship winning squad, specialised Lululemon a couple of years ago, so she is very, very strong and powerful rider, and we're getting a clear demonstration of that. But so too is Archibald, and Laura Trott has managed to get across the gap, so it's 2-1 for Wiggle Honda against Perlazumi at the moment. That's another strong situation for them. Will Wiggle Honda try and get other riders up there?
It looks like Danny King of Wiggle Honda is trying to get across to that now.
So Danny King, the reigning champion. Haven't seen too much of her so far this afternoon, but she's kept her powder dry as long as she possibly could. But now she has to make a big effort, because Archibald has drawn clear with Becker. Trott has managed to get involved, and Danny King knows that it's now or never in terms of getting back to the front of the race.
Well, it looks like she's just about to make contact there, which makes a very powerful position for Wiggle Honda. 3 riders against Katie Archibald. Katie Archibald doesn't look phased. She looks very comfortable there, and she's in the middle of Wiggle Honda. Look, they're passing lapped riders now, so that's a little bit of a tricky situation on a criterium circuit as well.
And the chasing group of riders doesn't look as if they're able to get coordinated to close this one down quick enough. At the moment, anyway, these riders up front riding smoothly, riding well. Eileen Rowe, I did spot, is caught in no man's land between the two groups at the moment. And Danny King looks as if this is a real fight for her. Desperately trying to get back involved. It's her teammate Charlotte Becker that's on the front. I wonder, does she realise?
Well, Charlotte Becker, 31 years of age, from Germany. She's in the police force, as was Tony Martin. So she likes to work for the police. I think they need to do a stint of about 6 weeks during the year. But she has great support by her police force, and it's a part of her yearly schedule that she really enjoys. So that's an interesting piece of information there about Lottie Becker.
4 riders up front, Eileen Rowe chasing in between, and then there's a group of about 7 or 8 riders behind that are fighting to get back into contention. But this is the lead group with Charlotte Becker on the front, Laura Trott behind. Katie Archibald now has slotted in behind, and Danny King getting a little breather on the back after her huge exertions to get across that gap. We see Eileen Rowe, the Scottish rider, in the distance. Stardy Primal Pro Cycling rider, and it's a big fight for her now. 1 against 4, as behind the group of chasers is trying to get organised and needs to do that quickly.
This looks like it could be the break of the day. These 4 riders, they're 4 of the strongest riders in the race, and we see Lottie Becker, she's still on the front now. It's just been an amazing ride. She's got Laura Trott there in second and Katie Archibald, and then Danny King just on the back. We should expect a move from Danny King, because she did win this race last year and she's come back the second time that the milk race has existed, and it's definitely a race that she wants to win this year on the road.
Carlizumi Sports Tours International represented in the group behind. I think that's Ciara Horn that's on the front of the group. Charlotte Becker working hard on the front of the breakaway group. National road race champion of Germany a few years ago.
Well, these 2 track stars here, Laura Trott and Danny King, they're wanting to make the Commonwealth Games on the road, so this is a really important event for them for selection for the Commonwealth Games on the road. And here we see Lottie Becker still in the front, and Danny King in second place, and Laura Trott and Katie Archibald on the back there. So this is certainly a really important race for them as well, given they have very rare opportunities to race on the road, but they do have aspirations on the road, and they'd both like to be representing at the Commonwealth Games.
Well, Katie Archibald, better known as a track rider, but as I said before, the track skills often translate well to city centre racing. Those big efforts, relatively short event compared to road racing. And here comes a big dig from Charlotte Becker, and Katie Archibald must be feeling very lonely in there at the moment, because there's only one rider that's going to chase these Wiggle Hondas, and that has to be Katie Archibald. And Charlotte Becker has started the softening up process.
Well, this is the teammate of Katie Archibald on the front, so she's doing a bit of chasing, wants to get over there to give her a hand and to be an extra rider in that breakaway group.
Yeah, that's Ciara Horn, who's part of the British track programme. She's represented Britain in a track World Cup so far, and hoping to step up to the big squad very shortly. Meanwhile, Wiggle Honda have riders throughout the group, and on the front, Becker, several bike lengths advantage, but she just has a little look over her shoulder and realises that Katie Archibald has been able to get back to them, and this is causing, well, difficulty for Danny King. The reigning champion didn't like that dig at all. It didn't suit her. Of course, she made a huge effort to get across to this group, and I don't think she really had time to recover in time for the next effort.
Well, this is really inspiring and a courageous ride by Katie Archibald to keep going to the front and just applying pressure when she's outnumbered. She's certainly riding a really strong race. She's the one making it hard for those Wiggle Honda riders now.
Well, now we're down to 3 up front. Can Danny King manage to claw her way back up to the lead group? It's a crisis moment for the reigning champion. As meanwhile, on the front of the chase group, it's Ciara Horn that's doing all the work. Katie Archibald's teammate, and setting a steady tempo that is discouraging any of the other riders from attacking.
Well, she won't get any help there by those 2 Wiggle Honda riders. There's 3 of them there, Eleanor Barker, Amy Roberts and Anna Bianca Schnitzmeyer. They're just sitting on, and they're hoping that the breakaway will stay away, because they've got Laura Trott and Danny King up front there, and they would be quite confident that there's 3 Wiggle Honda riders with Katie Archibald.
The lead group of 3 chased by Danny King, and they just mop up some lapped riders. Meanwhile, the chase group still trying to get organised. And it's Ciara Horn that is setting the steady tempo. She'll get a little bit of help from Katie Curtis very shortly, as soon as Curtis is able to get to the front. And still Archibald is keeping Danny King behind because she's not managing to claw her way back on there. It's Laura Trott sitting in the wheel of the Scottish rider, getting as close to a free ride as it's possible in city centre racing. I think everyone has to make huge efforts. There's no free ride in crit racing. And Archibald absolutely driving, pumping a relatively big gear. She certainly likes to, well, she certainly is a very, very powerful rider.
Now this is really impressive to see her just making this race so hard, and you can see Danny King's been struggling to make contact on the back there for quite a while now, but Katie Archibald hasn't sat up. She just keeps applying the pressure, and I think we should see an attack from Laura Trott or Lottie Becker. Oh, here we go. Danny King's just made contact, so they're back together now and they've got strength in numbers again.
Welcome back to Nottingham. We're in the closing stages of the Women's Elite Milk Race for 2014. That's a lapped rider on the front as we wait for the lead group of 4 riders, as Danny King just gets it all wrong at that corner, and she's been severely inconvenienced by that. We just see Danny King, the reigning champion, wearing number 1, trying to dust herself down. I think she was in the barrier there, is on the front. Laura Trott, Katie Archibald behind her, and Trott's Wiggle Honda teammate Charlotte Becker resume and stay out front. But Danny King, well, it looks as if that's all up for her there.
That was disastrous with just 5 laps to go for Danny King to overshoot the corner. She went into the barricades, and we can see now that she's just off the back with that other group now, and her teammates are wondering what should they do, wait for her or should they continue to go. But it's Katie Archibald that's gone to the front, and she said, okay, this is my opportunity to eliminate one of the Wiggle Honda riders, and she's applying the pressure there, which will make it really hard for Danny King to come back now.
Well, what an inspiring performance this has been from Katie Archibald throughout the afternoon. Hasn't been cowed in any way by the reputation and the massed ranks of the Wiggle Honda team. Instead, she's been on the front as much as any other rider. Danny King, though, that was so unfortunate, just getting it wrong at that tricky left-hander that's caught out so many riders this afternoon. Laura Trott now slotting in third. Charlotte Becker just in front of her, and Katie Archibald realises that she doesn't want Danny King, the reigning champion, to get back into contention, so she's going to stay on the front. Now has a little look over her shoulder to survey the scene, realises that Danny King is out of contention at this moment, but well, not the attack that we might expect it as we're coming to the closing stages inside the last few laps of this Women's Elite Milk Race for 2014.
This has been a really smart ride by Katie Archibald, being so outnumbered, but she's certainly very, very strong, and even though she's only been in the sport a couple of years, she seems to be very switched on, and her instinct said that when they lost Danny King there, to apply the pressure on the front to bring her numbers down a little bit. Now she's got to contend with 2 riders coming into the finish, and she's keeping a look over her shoulder, so she's picked that tactic up from the track, and she's not taking her eye off what's going on, and she looks like she's having fun out there. Actually, I think that was a little bit of a smile by Katie just then.
Oh, that's extraordinary. This woman really has got an absolutely fantastic personality and a wonderful attitude to her racing, and clearly really enjoying. She's been lifted by the atmosphere, this huge crowd in Nottingham, and lifted too by the standard of rider around her from the Wiggle Honda Pro Cycling Squad, and she is, well, she's not. It's not affecting her in any way except perhaps improving her performance. This is the chase group behind.
Well, yes, Katie Archibald, she's a fun rider, and it would be really interesting to know what colour hair she has today, because she's famous for changing her hair colour. She said she's won with yellow hair, pink hair, green and blue, so it'd be interesting to see what colour her hair is today under that helmet.
And what colour would her hair be if she won the World Championship? I think she'd have the entire spectrum in her hair, but at the moment she's thinking about, well, those are in her hair a bit at the moment of the Wiggle Honda team. It's still 2 against 1. Tactically, it's a very difficult situation. Laura Trott has got to be the favourite at the moment. The European, World and indeed Olympic Omnium champion. Also a member of Great Britain's victorious Team Pursuit squad at London 2012. An absolute superstar of world cycling at track level, and also a very, very formidable competitor in city centre racing. So Trott sitting at the back of the group, getting the maximum amount of shelter. She's got Charlotte Becker to try and help her and project her into a perfect situation at the back end of this race. Katie Archibald, she's flying solo. It seems to be suiting her so far this afternoon, as behind Well, that group is not as organised as it was. Ciara Horn still doing great work on the front, but they're not going to get back into contention now.
Well, we saw Danny King was just trying to make her way back to that lead group, but I think at this point of the race they're too close to the finish, and we see Lottie Becker now having one last dig. Laura Trott following her. That's a strange move, I think. Lottie Becker wanted to put the pressure on Katie Archibald, but...
well, she certainly has had an effect. There's a few bike lengths difference between Laura Trott and Katie Archibald chasing behind. Big dig coming in from Charlotte Becker, and has it managed to cause a significant amount of pain to Katie Archibald? Will she have anything left for the sprint? Ciara Horn, meanwhile, continues to ride on the front of the chase group. Behind her, Katie Curtis of Starley Primal Pro Cycling.
Well, Katie Archibald's made her way back. It looks like she's in contact again, so it's going to be the three of them down to the finish.
Archibald just that couple of bike lengths back, which indicates that certainly was very difficult for her, and it's a big effort that it is taken for her to get back in there. Becker clearly is sacrificing her own ambitions to help the team, and specifically to help Laura Trott and get her into a situation. Archibald's still not quite on the back, is she?
They're definitely making it hard for Archibald. Laura Trott's holding that wheel of Charlotte Becker very closely to keep protected. And Lottie Becker, she has a reputation of being one of the strongest lead-outs in the world, but we've seen today she spent the majority of today's race on the front. So after doing that massive flight from China and having won a stage race there just a few days ago, I think that she'll be quite tired coming into this sprint, and it'll all be up to Laura Trott and Katie Archibald.
Well, Archibald's safely on the back of the group now, as we're in the penultimate lap, so just under 2.5 kilometres of racing left for these riders. Becker is going to take it up.
Well, it looks like they've taken the pressure off a little bit now, and they're going to let it come down to a sprint, and normally they'd be very difficult to beat, the combination of Lottie Becker and Laura Trott, but Katie Archibald looks very relaxed there, doesn't she?
Becker looking over her shoulder. Archibald too has been relaxed enough to be able to look over her shoulder a little bit in the last few seconds, so clearly the pressure that Becker applied not quite as severe as it was about a lap ago. As Danny King continues to chase behind, that's a lapped rider in front of her, and Danny King racing hard, but she's very much in no man's land at the moment. Ciara Horn still piling it on the front of that chase group, and at the moment I think it looks as if they could well manage to get up to Danny King.
Well, Danny King will be very frustrated at this point. She is the reigning champion, and she really wanted to come back and win this race this year, but unfortunately the riders out front needed to make a decision, and when Danny unfortunately crashed with 5 laps to go, it's too close to the business end of the race, and the riders have just continued to race, and we see now that it's likely to come down to a bunch sprint. But Danny King's not giving up. She's still trying to chase, and we see she's just come around the corner there, but looks like an impossible task from here.
Well, from Archibald's point of view, she hopes that Becker doesn't slow up too much, because that would allow Danny King to get back into contention. Becker equally is going to make it as difficult as possible for Katie Archibald. So it's a win-win situation tactically, you would say, for Wiggle Honda. They can't really lose no matter how fast they go at the moment, and it makes sense for Becker to set a pretty hefty tempo that's at least going to keep Katie Archibald behind as they head out on the final lap. This is the final 1.2 kilometre lap of the Nottingham city centre, and these 3 riders are surely going to contest the win now.
Well, I think Katie Archibald should be quite nervous that the 2 of them are there in combination, but like I said, she looks very relaxed, and she's had a bit of she had to chase with about 4 or 5 laps to go, but now she's been sitting on for a couple of laps. She might be quietly confident coming into this sprint.
Yeah, she's been so strong. Katie Archibald in the perfect position now, apart from the fact that she's got 2 Wiggle Honda riders in front of her. She's sitting behind them, so she's able to see what's happening, and Becker piles on the pressure as they come up to lap riders, and these are tense, nervous moments, because it's easy to be caught napping as you go through lapped riders. Danny King chasing, has been caught by the chase group led by Ciara Horn. So Danny King, the reigning champion, not only is she not going to get a top 3 position, but she's going to have to really struggle to get a top 4 position now. Becker continues to lead through the last few turns. She's going to lead it out. Laura Trott on her wheel, gold medalist in the Omnium, has a great sprint, a superb sprinter, and Becker is starting to wind it up. Katie Archibald sitting in 3rd place. Those are lapped riders behind. They're not really part of the action. They're not sprinting it out for the victory as Becker leads them through the final series of turns. Who's it going to be at the conclusion of the milk race for 2014? Becker driving for the line. Now Katie Archibald goes to move up around Laura Trott. And she moves to her left, going for the line. Becker has a little look and sees that Katie Archibald is right there. Laura Trott launches, but who's going to get it first? It's Katie Archibald that takes victory in the milk race of 2014. She's managed to prevail over the massed ranks of the Wiggle Honda riders, and that was a wonderful success. Disappointment for Laura Trott. Great ride by Charlotte Becker in third place. Wiggle Honda coming up with a great result, but the ultimate result going to Katie Archibald of Pearl Izumi Sports Tours International.
That was a phenomenal win and a phenomenal ride by Katie Archibald to beat all those numbers of the Wiggle Honda team.
Yep, fantastic team. Like, we always knew it was going to be we hoped it was going to be Wiggle Honda versus Pearl Izumi. That was the headline that we were looking at, and it's fared well for us.
It can be more luck than anything. I mean, there's a lot of corners, and it can be with like positioning around the last corner, and when you get your jump, and we got out jumped coming into the finish, so Katie was obviously better.
I was going into that sort of hoping that we could maybe go away with myself, Sarah Story, Kira Horn. Like, those were the girls that we thought would go for a break, and Charlene Joyner in our team, that was the sprinter we were counting on. So when it looked like Wiggle were trying to make that gap, I just had to cover, try and sit in and do minimal work, and if it didn't come back to the bunch, then go for the win.
Oh, it's been amazing. It's so nice to see that the milk race is finally back up and running, and the crowd here were unbelievable yet again.
Yeah, so I did my first race last year here at the Nocturne race, and I was very impressed about the crowds of people here, and at the women's tour as well. And now today it makes really fun to race here in Great Britain. It's different than in Germany and then in Europe in general. I think the atmosphere is way better, and it makes really fun. I enjoy it.
So Katie Archibald takes victory in the women's milk race for 2014. Laura Trott and Charlotte Becker round out the podium for Wiggle Honda. Eleanor Barker gets up for fourth ahead of Katie Curtis, and Danny King, the reigning champion, has to make do with sixth place. Katie Archibald celebrates, and she gets to drink the milk. It's been a wonderful day of racing in Nottingham. Goodbye for now.